Long-range planning, Mr. Hinshaw.
Good evening. We have making our way through the meetings. Our next scheduled meeting is April 5th with the committee. We'll tour Wyman, and as I mentioned before, we tied early childhood and PAT, even though the PAT office is in this building. We just wanted one more place to collect input on either one of those topics, and obviously Wyman houses the largest population of early childhood students. As of last week, that number was about 157 pre-K students in that building, just to give you an update on that. We will have another meeting on the 24th to finalize the draft for the board and then present to you all our final draft for the 10-year plan. Again, we've gone through each one of these buildings and tried to list the needs as the committee has discussed them, and we'll bring recommendations and kind of list of things that we feel are big vision, long-range facility plans for the district as we move through these with the board. I'm going to move on through each building. You've seen these before, so I wanted to get to the last meeting that we had. Truman Elementary Facility, we did meet there last, and Truman's a unique building. It was designed in 1970. 69 is when the bond issue passed. It was opened in 1970 with the concept of a pod open concept idea. So if people go in there now, we've closed classrooms in the original footprint of the building. You had a library in the center of the building that was completely open all the way around it, no walls. And then there were 8 classrooms that surrounded that library with no walls. That since then has been determined to maybe not be the best way to have an elementary school design. So walls have gone in, which has presented some challenges. I say there's significant issues with the original design of the building. In our committee meetings, the discussions even got to the point, well, we keep the east and the west wings and maybe just start over in the middle with some ideas. But it's an interesting facility. We do have adequate classroom space right now, which you've been hearing through all the buildings for general classroom population. For the population that we're currently serving, we're in pretty good shape. However, there are some areas that the square footage is not very accessible in this building. Second floor, what originally was an art room is now used for individual instruction, but it's not ADA accessible at all. So that presents some challenges when we're trying to work with certain students. So there's some things that we saw as a committee that could really be enhance this facility. Discussions centered around main office and always enhancing security. That's been a topic. That's something that we constantly study. You know, as a board, we talk about security all the time, not just when it happens to be a hot topic in the national discussion, but that's as an administrative team, that's a concern every day. But we're always looking at that, so there's a need listed there. Other needs in Truman, kitchen and cafeteria upgrades, as you heard at Mark Twain as well, and you'll see that again when we discuss the Wyman building. The need to either relocate the library or to try to create a way to close that in, give it a little bit more privacy, and make it function a little bit better. So those are some of the things that we've discussed on this as a committee. Other, maybe not quite so big, would be canopies, some discussions for canopies for waiting areas for student pickup and those kind of things. And then all the buildings, with certain sections of each building, you get into mechanical issues, HVAC, those problems. Our elementary schools were not designed, for example, for air conditioning at all. The Wyman Elementary, for example, air conditioning was added in 1996. And so it's really not designed for air conditioning to be running and to have fresh air at the same time, which of course nowadays is an expectation when you build a building, is to bring in fresh air and heat it or cool it to the appropriate level, so you have a little bit better air quality than maybe back in the 70s or 80s or 90s when you close a building up. So those are some challenges that the district will need to prepare for in upgrading some mechanical systems in the older sections. I will say one of the real pluses to a 10-year plan, we've replaced our boilers in every building in the last 10 years. Some of those were 1950s boilers that got replaced. Some were a little newer than that. And Vicki, before she left, we were able to run comparisons of utilities from 10 years ago to last year. And our utility costs are about the same. And so when you stop and think about the square footage that this district has added over the last 10 years, that's pretty incredible. And one of the main reasons is we've changed some of our heating and cooling systems out. They're much more efficient. And then the other area that we've seen some cost savings is lighting. We've improved lighting in several of the buildings, all three elementaries, the middle school, and we're starting in the junior high. So 10-year plans don't just build facilities. That's not all it does. It helps guide our budgeting for improvements across the district. So I think that's something to point out. Talked a little bit about the schematics and the purpose of those, and I'm not going to read that to you again this week, but just have it up here for those that might be watching. So the committee will look at drawings from the architects. Just wanted to touch on a couple things that the committee saw. In the presentation you will get, there will be drawings like on the right here. This is every section of the high school roof that has been redone. So you don't just redo the whole high school at one time. So I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sections of roof on that building. The graph on the left in our presentation, for the next 10 years, there'll be a schedule for roof replacements, and that'll help in budgeting for Kendra and the maintenance department as we lay that out for the district to have an idea. I know the type's way too small, but the idea is every section matches up with a section on whatever building. We have the date when it was put in, what the warranty is, what type of roof it is, how many square feet, and then the estimated cost for the ones that need to be replaced still. And just in the next 8 years, if you could see that chart, there's an estimated $1.2 million worth of roof replacements. And that's not, every one of those lines on that page on the left is a section of roof in our school district. And the ones that have numbers up there is $1.2 million. So even that is a task in itself for you all as a board to oversee that, be responsible, and have people working for you that keep track of those things. So we're trying to help lay out that plan. So it's not just about adding facilities, although, yes, we do discuss that, and yes, there are needs. The other thing that happens is the architects will also provide budget estimates. These are 2 samples from 12 years ago. The sample on the left is for a kitchen at Truman, and the sample on the right are the 5 priorities at Truman that were identified by the committee. And so it's kind of a cover sheet for the budget estimates. And then each proposed facility change would have a budget tied to that, or a budget estimate. And what that does is it just, it's very generalized. For example, an architect knows that if you're going to excavate and put in 2 new classrooms, you always want to set aside a little bit of contingency for hitting rock. And so they put, based on their experience, they'll put in an estimate for that and those kind of things and try to build all that in. So a board and an administrative team, as you start talking with your community about, okay, what is it that we need to do or want to do first, you at least have some numbers to talk about. And obviously those can change in 3 or 4 years, but it's at least a starting point. So the final document will have some of those in there. The committee timeline, as I said, we'll meet at Wyman, and then we'll meet one more time after that, and then have a presentation for you all on the 10th that kind of wraps it up, and hopefully you all will find that satisfactory work and accept that report. If you have any questions, or again, Greg and Charlotte, Jim's not here tonight, but Greg and Charlotte serve on the committee, so I don't know if they have comments as well.
I was just going to say, it's been really helpful having Mark at our meetings and our tours, since he's done several of the past construction projects. He knows a lot of times that's where the rock is, or that's going to cost extra in that place, and so his expertise has been really, really helpful.
And I have traveled up to his office twice now since this process started to really sit down and, after the committee has talked about these topics, then to try to put that on paper as far as the drawings and bring those back to the committee and let them kind of look at them to say, okay, did we capture everything we talked about as possible needs? And when those drawings come out, there'll be proposed, and then there will be future. So proposed will have budget numbers tied to it, and then future is just places that we've identified that the building, if you needed to add classrooms, here's a place that you could do them. We're not saying we would need them. They're not proposed right in this 10-year plan, but it's to identify that. And Mark and I were talking about how this process can save school districts money, because it's not inexpensive to do this process. The time it takes, the commitment it takes, and then also the architect obviously has fees. But if you can at least put on paper where people later on think about something and say, you know, before we do something, let's kind of look. People have thought about this before, and if we just stick something here on the end of this building, 5 years from now, we might wish we hadn't have stuck it right here, because it's going to cost us more later to change it, move it, tear it down. He even said just a simple thing like, if in a district, we're not doing this, hopefully, but in a district, in this district 20 years ago, they had to bring in some trailers. And even where you set those, where's the place most people would set them? They'd set them on the levelest piece of ground they could find close to the building, right? And he said even that decision can cost you later, because you may have to pay to move that so then you can build where it's sitting. But you can't get rid of it because you still need it for classrooms while you're building. And he said, so even that simple decision can cost you money in the future. So those are the kinds of things.
Exactly what we did at 3 elementary schools.
And so those proposed ideas and then those future ideas maybe help a district. It's not perfect, but at least it gets people to talk and think about what might happen later. So.
And one of the benefits of you going to St. Louis to their office is Ted Drew's right next to
I haven't been there, though. There is a restaurant called Mama's that we've had a sandwich there, so that's pretty good.
How long ago did we add the gyms and classrooms to the 3 elementary schools?
2005 is when those opened.
That was prior to our most recent plan.
It was, as that plan was being developed, that plan actually became a realization in '07. So 2005-06 was kind of the committee year, and then the plan was enacted in 7. So
And was Mark the architect? Was his firm the architect at that time?
he was the architect since 2003. So he helped design those 3 additions, and then has done projects since then.
This building was our first project together.
This wing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
From the administration fire.
that would have been 2003.
Well, I think the process is, it is, it's very thorough, it's been very well organized. How many, what's the number of people who have submitted thoughts on?
218 people have given input on the actual electronic survey, and then there's other, for example, PTOs have met, and then the principal enters their information at some of the schools. So there's been more people than that involved, but 218 entries, and I would say
That's outside of the
Six-
teacher survey.
65 or 70 pages worth of input. That's counting staff. That's
Oh, that's-
all input electronically. So,
And the committee has good representation too, administrators, faculty, board.
yeah, community members, the community members have really been valuable,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And city planner is helping with us, and it's been good. Good.
That's great. Thank you.
Good stuff.
All right.